Now, if you've seen any of my other videos on the topic of Rey and Kylo Ren before, you've no doubt heard me say that this sequel trilogy is not going to be as simple as Rey on the light side versus Kylo Ren on the dark side, that there will instead be some unexpected twists and turns, and some type of dynamic relationship formed between these two characters, who right now likely hate each other, but will for some reason or another have a vested interest in each other's fate by the end of this trilogy. And such a turn of events is likely going to be something like, yet probably vastly different in its own respect, to Luke learning that Vader was his father in The Empire Strikes Back. It's something that makes our main hero, in that case Luke, question everything he thought he was trying to accomplish. Because with a few words from Vader, Luke went from being hellbent on destroying a faceless monster or machine to questioning why he'd been lied to by Obi-Wan and Yoda, and if he could really kill his own father. Not to mention, he had to seriously begin to examine the vision he'd had on the cave on Dagobah, and to question whether or not, like his father before him, he too could fall to the dark side. And that is just one of the great many reasons why Empire Strikes Back is widely regarded as the best movie in the franchise, because even though the story itself is pretty straightforward and easy to follow, the complexity behind the decisions and dilemmas these characters face and find themselves in, ones the audience could have never seen coming, make it more than just the well-made action movie it appears to be on the surface. It makes it a true masterpiece, because we really start to care about the fate of these characters and form strong connections to them. And the problem The Last Jedi now faces is that, as the second movie of this trilogy, it's going to be heavily compared to The Empire Strikes Back, which is obviously a lot to live up to, and will require something to happen that, much like the Luke and Vader dynamic in Empire, adds a layer or two of complexity and drama to the Rey and Kylo Ren relationship, layers that leave us questioning how this is all going to play out, and if we can possibly get a happy ending for these characters that we've grown to care about on both sides of the struggle. Because as much as you might hate Kylo Ren right now for killing Han Solo, don't be surprised if by the end of this trilogy, you're questioning that hatred and seeing him and his situation in a new light. Just like by the end of Return of the Jedi, I dare say most of us were hoping for Vader to come back to the light side. And during that final confrontation, we cheered when he finally turned on the Emperor to save his son. And when you consider it's been heavily implied throughout the canon that Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, has been a victim of Snoke and his manipulations for his entire life, I think it's safe to say, starting with The Last Jedi, they're going to start to generate more and more sympathy for this character, to the point where we start to question just what kind of fate he deserves to meet. And the best way to do all that is through the eyes of Rey, so that she too can start to gain sympathy for Ben. But how do you do that? Because as I mentioned before, right now, Rey no doubt hates Kylo for torturing her, killing Han, and gravely wounding Finn, among other things. Well, you likely do it by having Rey have visions about Ben's past, not unlike when she had a vision the first time she touched Anakin's saber in Maz's castle. And I think it's likely that Luke could still have something that belonged to Ben on the island, something he's keeping, something Rey could stumble upon and touch, and have a vision of Ben, as a boy probably, being tortured in some way by Snoke already. And perhaps that first shot from the first trailer, where Rey is breathing heavily and looks afraid and like something has just happened to her, is right after she's had one of these visions of Ben, and that, for whatever reason, the bond between Rey and Kylo Ren is so strong she could literally feel his pain and fear. Which brings me to the first of a few different things I've found interesting in the trailers, commercials, and elsewhere, and that was a line spoken by Rey to Luke when she said that Kylo had failed him and that she wouldn't. Now, what I find so interesting about this is it implies Rey knows a fair deal about what happened between Luke and Kylo Ren, and something tells me that's not something Luke likes to talk about, and wouldn't discuss with her in any great detail unless he was forced to. So perhaps Rey has actually seen this betrayal in a vision, which will allow us to actually see it as well, instead of just hearing about it from Luke or whoever, and in this scene, she is asking Luke more about it, and when Luke tells her his side of what happened, she tries to promise him that she won't fail him and turn like Kylo Ren did. Along those same lines, then, there are two other images or scenes I found very interesting as well. The first comes from the second trailer, when Snoke seems to be draining or in some respect torturing Rey while in Snoke's throne room. The other is a photo that likely comes from an earlier part of that same scene, which is a picture from Entertainment Weekly where Rey seems to be standing before Snoke in his throne room just as Kylo Ren enters from behind. Now, first of all, I find it odd that Rey would actually confront Snoke here in this second movie of the trilogy. It would be akin to Luke being taken before the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back, which is a situation I can't foresee Luke getting out of. And Rey facing off against Snoke is a situation that I can't see her getting out of, Unless, of course, something happens like Kylo Ren saves her, or Luke swoops in to make the save himself. Then there's also the possibility that Rey will somehow save herself in this situation, though if she escapes the clutches of both Snoke and Kylo Ren on her own, it's certainly not going to help silence the critics of Rey who were unhappy about all she seemed to accomplish in The Force Awakens. Then again, maybe Snoke turns Rey to the dark side right here and there, and that's where the movie ends, with a giant cliffhanger and us all wondering what will become of Rey now. Though, showing that scene then seems like a pretty good way to kinda ruin the ending of the movie right in a trailer. So even though all of these are certainly strong possibilities as to what's actually happening, I think there's another one. I think it's possible Rey isn't even really there, but is instead there via a vision of the past, one where Kylo gets tortured by Snoke in some respect for failing him. In other words, when we see Rey just standing there seemingly before Snoke, that's where the vision begins, with her looking upon Snoke just as Kylo Ren enters behind her. And soon after, for one reason or another, Snoke begins to torture his prized student, and, because of the Force bond between them, Rey begins to experience that pain. And yes, I'll admit that's a lot of assumptions to make off one picture, but something about it doesn't feel right. Again, this seems like a good way to spoil a major moment in the movie, Snoke encountering Rey, or even the ending of the movie. So instead of a spoiler of any kind, it's likely a tease or misdirect. Just like them wanting us to believe Finn was going to be a Jedi when they showed him with a lightsaber during the marketing for The Force Awakens. Anyway, what I think this movie is going to do is start to show the opposite sides of our two main characters of this trilogy, those of course being Rey and Kylo Ren. I think we, along with Rey, are going to see why and how Ben Solo fell to the dark side, and it's not going to be pretty, and it's going to change the way she and we feel about him. And on the flip side, we're going to see Rey perhaps become a bit angrier and a bit overconfident. For some reason or another, I think she's going to take up the challenge of bringing Ben Solo back to the light, and that she may even try to seek him out. And for all we know, when we see Kylo Ren reaching out his hand to someone at the end of that second trailer, it is Rey, but she's the one extending it to him first. Furthermore, I think when we hear Luke say to Rey during the second trailer that this isn't going to go the way you think, he's warning her that bringing Kylo back to the light isn't going to be as easy as she suddenly believes. And I think this is all going to be a part of how Rey, overall, will fail and fail miserably in this movie, just like a lot of people think she needs to after a very impressive showing in The Force Awakens. And even though I could be dead wrong with these predictions here, and probably am, one thing I do feel very confident about is that all the marketing campaign for this movie has really done is just misdirected us. Whatever is going to happen in this movie, and it's likely going to be big, they're going to do all they can to keep it under wraps until the movie is released. And what better way to do that than to show us something that gets us all thinking one thing is going to happen when the exact opposite will in the movie itself. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Are we all being grossly misdirected by these trailers, commercials, and pictures? Or can we really start to guess at how this movie is going to play out by them? Either way, let me know in the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.